Warning, 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 warning. 3, 2, 1. The FantasyFootballTips.co podcast with Mills and Quigliano.
Hi, you're listening to Fantasy Football Tips in association with Premier Fund, the home of daily fantasy football betting. My name's Mills and I'm joined by Quigliano. Hello, Quigliano.
Hello there.
A good international break for you, Quigliano. Have you enjoyed the time off from Fantasy Premier League?
I have. I've spent a lot of time looking at my team.
And how's it looking?
Thinking...
If it's as bad as mine, then I'm not... The season's got to kick off, hasn't it? I mean, has it really started yet? We're 4 game weeks in, and I think I'd be happy with this points haul after 2 weeks normally. This is appalling.
Considering I've spent all pre-season mulling over it, getting a nice balance to it, getting all the top players in there, I now look at my team and think, what the hell has happened to that strategy? As I look across my team and pity it. But it's not been a normal season for me so far. Off air, you just told me there's a top of the table clash this weekend.
There is a top of the table clash, and it's Man City Crystal Palace, or Crystal Palace Man City.
So what sort of season is it when that's happening?
Well, it's 4 games in, isn't it? And these things always happen. And you look at over history, the season will balance itself out.
It will.
And the top players will remain the top players. You know, I saw an article the other day that said Mahrez has been linked to Barcelona. I mean, are they checking out the Fantasy Premier League top midfielders and going on that? I don't know.
He may have wrote that himself. I'm not sure
maybe he did. I mean, good luck to him.
If we can do a podcast on fantasy football, then he can probably write his own review to go to Barcelona.
Then maybe. But, yes, people say Hazard has had a terrible start to the season. Many people predicted that. I've always been one of those that's tried to avoid Hazard in my team. I don't know why, and I've even took him out this season now.
Well, you don't like winning, do you? So.
Well, obviously. Sanchez, obviously, on the back of the Copa America, he hasn't kicked on really yet. But other players have. Like we said, Mahrez, Ayew.
Yaya's back.
And some exciting... Gomez, these new players as well coming in. And I think the transfer window has opened up a few more opportunities for us, hasn't it? And we'll talk about that later. Let's look at our podcast team, Quigliano. We scored a massive 25 points last week. And I'll tell you now, in our own league, we sit 936th.
I do treat that like Jon Snow, the illegitimate child that has nothing to do with me. Okay, that's just an add-on to me. It's hideous. 25 points.
It is hideous. So let's get straight in there, Quigliano. I mean, we're looking at changes for this week. We had money in the bank, around 4 million, because we dropped Rooney, didn't we? And we put Wilson in, and that was probably the only positive thing from last game week. The fact that we did drop Rooney, who didn't score, and we put Wilson in, who did. So we're happy with Wilson.
The fixtures are good for them as well.
Fixtures look good.
That transfer always made sense.
Absolutely. And we captained Aguero. Lots of people did against Watford. He didn't really fire on all cylinders, did he? But he had a glorious opportunity which he didn't take, and normally he would. He's still going to get the goals this season, beyond any doubt, isn't he? He's still number 1 striker at Man City. So we're looking at Jordan Ibe. He's dropped in value, unfortunately, Quigliano. I'm afraid to report 4.9 million now.
Well, there's articles out there, in fact, on the value of value in terms of people that chase the price boost rather than maybe hold out, because it's always a danger doing these early transfers to try and get the most value from a player. So, for example, when everyone's transferred them in, his price is going to rise, and if you get in there early, you get the benefit of that. However, with international breaks, I don't like to be putting in players that potentially are going to get injured. So, give me an example. Who's played 2 games this week for England? Rooney. You could put Rooney in. He's played two full matches. If he gets a hamstring injury, you've transferred him in, only to then have to probably transfer him back out. So personally, I sit tight on that and wait until I know that really they are going to be playing in that starting lineup.
Okay, so coming back to our team, I think we're looking at Ibe, aren't we, as a weak link now at the moment.
Fixtures not the best.
Fixtures aren't the best, and the way Liverpool have gone about their last couple of games, we're not happy, are we?
Firmino going to probably lose. He's going to break in.
Absolutely.
So,
and a player that I would like to bring in, Quagliarano, is a player that I've put in my own team last week, and he paid massive dividends for me, and that's Andre Ayew. He scored a goal and got a lovely assist, didn't he, against Manchester United? So what we're thinking there, we're still going to leave us money in the bank, but Swansea this week go to Watford away. I will say Watford at home at the moment, 2 home games, they've kept 2 clean sheets, but I fancy Swansea. The way they're playing, I think they can undo Watford, and I think 1 goal in that first half, Watford are going to have to go and chase, and I think that's a completely different game.
What you've called it, Mystic Mills.
Mystic Mills. So that's what I'm calling. I'm calling a Swansea victory away at Watford. It may not be the most radical of calls. Like I say, could be controversial because they've had the 2 clean sheets. No, he's the form man, isn't he? I mean, he's hit the ground running.
What Depay should have been. I can't even remember whether I've said that on air before, but he's playing the role that Depay should have been playing, supporting that second striker and actually joining in the attack and getting some goals. It might be that Depay finally does kick in this week, and unbelievably we've still kept faith in him. But there's a long-term goal there, because we look at the fixtures. With that money in the bank, eventually, if we skip out, again we're thinking long-term, gives us room to maybe not do nothing next week, sit tight for 2 transfers the following week, at which point we can get Costa up front joining Aguero. So
that'd be strong, wouldn't it? Yeah, certainly with Hazard, Depay in behind, Mahrez, if he can continue the form. And just a word on Leicester this week. They're playing against Villa at home. That's real potential. Although I do like the business that Villa have done in defence. I think Micah Richards in there. I mean, he played centre back in the last game. I think with Joleon Lescott coming in, if he's ready and match fit, I think Richards goes back to right back. He becomes a real attacking threat again. I think there could be a bit more stability in that defence at Villa. But Leicester City, form team again, playing nice, attractive, attacking football. I think that's going to be a good game. What are your thoughts on Scott Sinclair?
He's somebody he's forgotten about, isn't he? Really, well, slightly because of that move to Man City that's stalled him. But he is a threat. In again, Villa going forward, they haven't got that many options, have they? In terms of like goal scoring threats, and the fact that he's 4 in 2 games. 4 in 2.
One was a League Cup game against Notts County, but you know that's.
But Rooney scored 50 goals for England, so we won't go into.
And he scored 2 in 2, and so did Kane.
We won't say the teams he scored against. We're not opening that can of worms, but he's an option. He's a cheap option. Again, it's your bargain basement players that are going to allow you to have the more expensive ones in your team. And I definitely think that's a go-to player as well, if you're looking for that. Okay,
good. So, Quagliarano, we're going to sort of close the door on our podcast team for now. We're going to come back to it next week, hopefully with a few more points. We're going to come back straight after this with Gary of the Week. But just a little plug, later on in the show, Quagliano, I'm going to be talking to John Gordon, the director of Premier Punt, and he's going to have some tips of his own, maybe to rival you.
That is a first.
You are listening to Mills and Quagliano on the FantasyFootballTips.co podcast. Sponsored by Premier Punt. All your fantasy Premier League tips in one juicy little podcast. Get in touch at www.fantasyfootballtips.co.
So, Quagliano, I'm going to come to you now for the Gary of the Week.
Gary of the Week. This has been a hot discussion actually, because I'm favouring Man City, but we've kind of put our heads together and come up with Gary of the Week based on form, based on fixture, although it's away from home, with your man Bafétimbi.
Bafétimbi Gomis.
Okay, we're thinking he has scored.
He scored every single game so far.
Every single game. Yeah. You can't ignore form like that, and that fixture. Don't forget, they are still newly promoted, and it's a big step up. So we're getting behind the Go Meister.
Okay, so we're going Gomis against Watford away from home. Gary of the week. You heard it here first. So Quigliano, that's the Gary, the guaranteed performer. I'm really interested by this one though. Your long shot of the week.
My long shot of the week, yeah. I've seen a little bit of him this season. Barcelona was there actually, his birthplace for me. It's Rondon up front at West Brom. I like him. I think he's gathered a
strong,
good
isn't he?
haul,
Yeah.
And he is, with everything else that's going on there, he's there to cement his place and really bring that make that centre forward spot his own. And I think he's done that well so far. 13 points altogether so far this season.
And West Brom take on Southampton this week,
who aren't the force that they were. People need to remember that for me, that Southampton team isn't still like what it was last season. They lost some good players, Klein, Schneiderlin. The goalkeeper's changed as well, so because Fraser Forster's injured.
Yeah.
So
they won 3-0, didn't they, against Norwich in their last game? But again, there was a sending off in that game. They were fairly fortunate, and kind of before that, a 0-0 away draw against Watford isn't really anything to brag about, is it? No. And then before that, they lost 3-0 at home to Everton. I mean, that really kind of shows, I think, what you're trying to say there, doesn't it?
Well, that is it. And again, it's wild. I'm not saying this is the Gary of the week because we've already established that. This is the long shot. This is for someone maybe you're in a league. You think, I want to steal a yard on my opponent. I'm calling out Rondon.
Okay.
And speaking of call-outs, it's time for Delia. Where are you? And we're looking to you, Arsenal, and there's two men, Theo, Giroud, or any Arsenal centre-forward. Where are you?
Where are you indeed?
Let's be having you, because
let's start scoring some goals.
There's a lot of teams out there begging to know who's going to be flaming starting and who's going to be scoring, who's going to be producing.
I mean, Giroud played for France, didn't he, in midweek, and he was booed. Booed by his own fans. His own nationality.
That wasn't Boo Earns. A little Simpsons reference for you there, but yeah, he was being booed, mate. And how does that make you feel?
Well, it doesn't bother me because he's
irrelevant.
He's irrelevant to me. I've not got him in my team. I would like to see Theo get a bit more of a chance. He came on. I know it's San Marino, scored 2 goals though, and he still had to put them in. He still had to be there, and his movement's good. And I'd just like to see him be given a little bit more opportunity at Arsenal. And I think, for me, when I look at Arsenal, their team is about pace. A lot of the team is about pace. Giroud doesn't fit that mould.
No, he isn't. He's the fox in the box that they're looking for, really, in that slightly different option as well, because he brings the only bit of strength in that team, really. But the main man is back. My man, my best mate, Mesut Ozil is back from injury. A little stomach complaint.
You were very upset about that.
I was very
last
upset.
Game week.
Although Eric Dier in my own personal team came off the bench, got me a clean sheet, so it was fine. But he's back, and Ozil makes Arsenal tick. Yeah. I know a lot of people aren't sure about him, but he rakes in bonus points because he's pretty much involved in everything that goes on. All the passing, increasing his BPS chance. So, where are you, Arsenal? Let's have something from you. But if you're listening, Ozil, sort me out, brother. New topic as well you want to talk about?
Well, you were saying that you were going to bring in something called a side tip.
A side tip, yeah.
We'll bring on the new topic in a minute. I'm intrigued by this side tip.
Well, you were like, what's a side tip? And I was like, oh, well, we can link it into like a side chick.
A side chick?
A side chick.
What's a side chick?
Nothing to do with... Side chick, just someone that you've got on the side there. Just something that...
I haven't got anyone on the side. Have you?
Of course I haven't.
So what are you talking about then?
I'm telling you, like, I'm giving you a bit of urban. I'm making you a little bit more street here, Mills.
Oh, right, okay.
Because you're
I like the gestures that he's doing. I know you can't see them on the podcast, but he's kind of gesturing. This side chick's about 3 foot tall.
I don't know where you're going with that, and I'm not going to dignify that with a response that's totally inappropriate. But no, just some side tips, because I feel like if some people out there, they're probably listening going, I want more tips. I don't just want a Gary of the week, because I might need to fire some more in. So it's where maybe you've had a look at the fixtures going, well, who else potentially could do something?
I mean, I'll throw one in there then. And I know we potentially were going to throw him in as the Delia, weren't we? Harry Kane. I think Spurs this weekend, I know they've only scored 3 goals in 4 games. They're yet to win. They go to Sunderland this week. Yes, Sunderland have picked it up a little bit, but they're still not looking great. for me, I think Spurs have a real good chance this weekend. And I read an article on Sky Sports the other day that was saying Spurs have had the most amount of chances created out of any team in the league. Now, if that happens against Sunderland, for me, they're going to score goals. And for me, I think Harry Kane is going to have a real chance. He looked sharp in the last game for England.
I've never rated him anyway, so I'm not gonna indulge this conversation.
Okay, but for me, I think, and I've read on Twitter, lots of people are saying Harry Kane, this is his week. This is his week. FPL the Ghost. Even the Ghost said it.
Well, I mean, they are playing Sunderland. I mean, that's probably the only reason why. And yeah, granted, look at the fixtures. It does make sense, but the form says his pants. So there's a little side tip. So you get into it now. Just a little bit on the side. A little bit on the side there of Harry Kane.
So let's hear about your bit on the side.
A little bit on the side. Well, we've talked about. There's a few names going to be firing out thick and fast. So Wilson, last week's tip.
Yeah.
We fancy that against Norwich. Shaqiri. I know it's a tough fixture, but a good player to have in there. He looked positive so far. Lens. I'm going against your Spurs talk. He has been returning. 3 assists and a goal in a struggling Sunderland team says all it needs to say.
He's a quality player, isn't he? In a struggling team, yeah.
And the new boy, De Bruyne. That is a little side tip there. Most sensible players are going silver for not much more money, 0.2 million more. I recommend to get in early on that one. He's a quality player who has scored previously. He scored a wonder goal for Belgium in the week. So get on board that little side tip, new feature. Bit of feedback on that, please.
You want me to give you feedback or the listeners? The listeners,
there, please,
of course.
mate.
Sorry, it's the... Okay, so...
Had your mocking glances.
So please, fire in some tweets at Quigliano, at FPL_the source.
Hashtag side tips.
Hashtag side tips. Or hashtag side chicks, if you like that sort of thing.
Maybe a few little Google images. Get on Google Images. Hook me up.
You are listening to Mills and Quigliano on the FantasyFootballTips.co podcast. Sponsored by Premier Punt. All your fantasy Premier League tips in one juicy little podcast. Get in touch at www.fantasyfootballtips.co.
Okay, so those of you that are regular listeners to the show will know that we are sponsored by Premier Punt, and I'm very pleased to say that I've got John Gordon, who's the director of Premier Punt, with me today. Hello, John.
Hi, how's it going, Jason? Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good, thanks, good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Just taking a little break, a little sabbatical out in Thailand just now.
Yeah. I mean, when you text me on a Monday morning saying that you're lying by a pool in Bangkok, that upsets me slightly. But I'm still glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, still finding time to make it on your appearance in your show. Loving what you guys are doing there. So glad to get an invite. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us. So John, obviously we'll talk a little bit about Premier Punt later on. But first and foremost, this is a Fantasy Football Tips podcast. So I'm going to come to you sort of for your take on this week. I know you're heavily involved in Fantasy Premier League yourself, and obviously fantasy football generally, certainly with your website. So sort of looking at game week 5, what are the sort of key fixtures for you?
Well, I think we've been shocked at how well Swansea and Crystal Palace have done, and you've got to really look at who they're playing on a week by week basis. I mean, you see this week Crystal Palace are up against City, and City have been tremendous. I mean, as an overview, it's not a question of how many Man City players do you have in your team, is in which areas. So you've got to have the 3 players, and even though they're playing Palace this weekend, you've got to have those players in your team. Unfortunately, I would usually be tipping Palace players, but not this week against City. You're looking around, you think the other high-performing teams, you've got Swansea doing really well this season, and away against Watford, you see them picking up a lot of cheap points, I think. and that will go into my tip of the week. But I think players like Gomez absolutely superb this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's scored in every single game so far, hasn't he, Gomez? Yeah. And then, I mean, are there any other sort of players at Swansea that you'd be looking at there?
Well, you've got AU there, excellent. He's been outstanding this season. But I think Shelvey's absolutely fantastic value on the Premier League official game at $5.5 million. I mean, I think he might come out and shell that call up for England. He really expressed himself. Yes, it was against lesser opposition, but at $5.5 million, I think he's a real bargain in the league.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that, and I think he's sort of the focal point of that midfield for them, isn't he? And everything kind of goes through him. You'd hope that he's going to get more assists, is the one thing I would say. Yeah. But, it could happen. And like you say, Swansea, in form, started the season very strongly. So, yeah, some high hopes there. Where else are we looking? Sorry, John.
Sorry to interrupt, Jason. I know he doesn't usually score a lot of points, and he's languishing this season, but he's a real confidence player. And when he's got his confidence up, he can really excel. Maybe not for the full season, but maybe I think this might be 2 or 3 games for him. Sorry to interrupt there, mate.
That's all right. That's all right. Strike while the iron's hot. That's what we always say, and we follow the form, and we like that. So, are you looking anywhere else this week? Some big matches, aren't there?
There are, and I think Sanchez is really to open up his wings at home against Stoke. Again, midfielder in a sort of attacking forward position, always going to guarantee you points, and I think he's going to really excel. A bit pricey at 11 million, but if home against Stoke, it may be a good captain choice for him. Who have you gone for this week, Jason?
Oh, that would be telling. That would be telling. I mean, my personal team, it's certainly a secret, but the podcast team, it's looking very likely that it's going to be Aguero. I know you said Crystal Palace, and it's an unusual sort of top of the table clash, isn't it, between Crystal Palace and Man City there? But Aguero, he's not hit the ground running yet, but it's got to happen at some point, and I'm going to put all my eggs in the Aguero basket this week.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's still to excel, and I think when he does, everyone's going to jump in the bandwagon. It's just when a lot of people have dropped him. I've seen a lot of, I've heard a lot of guys that have dropped him at the team, but with a guy of his quality, you just never know how dangerous that could be.
Yeah, exactly. And the form that Man City have started with, they've had tough fixtures and they've come through all of them with flying colours. And that's without Aguero, firing all cylinders. So fingers crossed that this will be the week for him. My other one for the week is Callum Wilson again. He scored the hat-trick. He then scored last week, and I had him in the team for that. The podcast team, we dropped Rooney and we put Wilson in. And again, Bournemouth this week go to Norwich, who, 2 championship teams from last season. So hopeful that he could add to his tally again this week. So Wilson and Aguero, but I'll probably sort of go for the safer bet with Aguero, to be honest. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think look at the other fixtures for this upcoming week with Man U versus Liverpool. I mean, you don't know who's going to turn up for either team. They're so unpredictable this season, and you can't really rely on any of them, to be honest. I think most of everyone in the websites get Klein, and I think that's a safe bet for the season-long game. But I think this weekend, who knows how that'll turn out. But again, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'm looking forward to watching the game for the excitement.
Absolutely. So John, the last few weeks you've given us a discounted player, haven't you, at Premier Punt? Generally, it's been a player that you think is going to do quite well for the week, and it gives our listeners the sort of exclusive inside knowledge, doesn't it? Because you don't advertise this player discount. So, are you going to be so good as to give us a discounted player this week?
Well, since I'm making a guest appearance, I thought I would give you a double value. So I'm going to put 2.
Oh wow, that is very generous.
One is a bit of a long shot, and the people listening to this podcast will probably realise where I'm coming from. It's Jonjo Shelvey. He's playing away against Watford. Like I say, he's not always a high-ranking scorer in the fantasy football, but I think with his confidence being high, we've discounted him almost 20% for your listeners. So just around the 8 million mark. And also De Bruyne for City. And although you may not be a stick on again, but I think he's going to be one to come out the trap run, and he's going to need to try and prove himself. So two players I personally think will do well this week, and we're giving you almost 20% off them in premierpunt.com.
Fantastic. So if you go to premierpunt.com and you create a team there, they're the two players that no one else is going to know these players are discounted. Yes, they can see them and they can get them, but they're not going to have that knowledge before they go there. So that's John Gordon, the director of premierpunt.com, telling you that you can get John Joe Shelvey and Kevin De Bruyne cheaper, 20% cheaper than their usual price. So John, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and just sort of touching on Premier Punt. I know you've got some new features that have launched over the last week or so. Do you want to just quickly sort of talk about those?
Yes, absolutely. We've now come out with a new type of game format where not only can you bet on a weekly game where our traditional members have been used to, where you could choose 11 players for that game week. We've now come up with a different concept where you can bet on any game. So it's fantasy football style betting, where you choose 5 players from any one match. There's no valuations in the players, but you go head to head against other people, play against other people, and the players in the single game get points for headers, tackles, interceptions, crosses. So if you come along to Premier Punt this weekend, we've got some great new games. We've still got the weekly betting, where you can bet on fantasy football on a weekly basis, based on the official Premier League point system. But we've also raised this new single game. So on a Monday night, a Wednesday night, whenever there's a game, you can bet on that single game. So we're quite excited about that. We've also got the chat function that's available, and we have the Champions League and Championship coming up in the next few weeks.
That's really good. I mean, sort of my first feelings of when I went on Premier Punt, John, was that it's got a real community feel, and it's that sort of, yes, you can play against your mates, but also you can play against people you don't know. You can there's free games, there's paid for games. But actually, I think the implementation of that chat feature is a really good idea, and it's something that hopefully we might look at doing on Fantasy Football Tips. That community spirit it kind of embodies Fantasy Premier League for me, and I think that will be a real good thing going forward for you. So best of luck with that, and I hope that takes off.
Thanks for that, Jason. And like I say, I always listen to a podcast. You and Quigliano do some great work out there, and giving it a bite-sized 10-20 minutes that people want to listen to and get some good advice. So I'm glad that you can let me be a part of that.
No, and that's you're more than welcome, John. And like I said, thanks for coming on the show. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. I'm going to try not to be too jealous. And as you're sitting on a beach watching the goals flying this weekend, just spare a little thought for us over here in England in the rain.
Okay, will do, guys. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Cheers, John. Thanks very much. So that was Quigliano. That was me talking to John Gordon, the director of Premier Punt.
What a man.
What a man. I mean, he's in Thailand. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I'm gutted.
Has he got a new suit?
I'm not
looking for something to...
Maybe he's looking for a side tip.
Oh, I thought you meant like he was in Thailand, like Poundland. You mean the country?
I'm in the country.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Thailand.
What a lovely place. I've been there myself.
Yes, I've not been there. I've been somewhere close, but I've not been there, no.
Capital of Thailand, primary school joke for you here.
Yes, I know that one.
So he's not going to say that one because you've learnt well.
So, Quigliano, I mean, we're coming towards the end of the podcast. It's been the international break. We had a week off last week, didn't we? And it hasn't treated me too well. I've been not very well this week, Quigliano.
You've been pig sick.
I've been very ill. But
Caught his own reflection.
I'm back and I'm raring to go for game week 5. Just to sort of wrap us up here, people often ask me, who should I captain? Who should we captain this week? Let's look at it from our podcast team point of view. I think that the obvious contenders this week for us potentially are Andre Ayew, Eden Hazard, Benteke, Aguero, Wilson, Depay, Mahrez. They're our sort of forwards.
Ooh, some ugly choices there. We the unimaginative captain. If you are struggling for choice, just go Aguero. It's a weight off your mind. You're not going to be sweating the whole weekend wondering, should I have captained Aguero? If you do it, chances are by the end of the season you'll have more points than
Yeah.
you lose. But we are having a stinker.
We are.
With
We're
this
in-
team. So a gambling man, the chasing man, might look for a little more differential there. The only options for me are Wilson because he's in good form, and Ayew with the form and the fixture.
What about Mahrez home against Villa?
Don't trust him.
No, I don't particularly either. I don't think it's going to carry on. I think he'll get the odd one or two, but I don't think it'll carry on at that rate. He can't carry on at that rate, can he, for the whole season?
I was saying that about Harry Kane last season.
That's
so
true,
he
yeah.
probably missed about 100 points there
Yeah.
because of that. But yeah, I mean,
I really fancy the Andre Ayew shouts this week. We said Gary of the Week Gomes, and I agree with that, but we don't have him. So if we don't have Gomes, is Andre Ayew not a really good shout? Because he's probably going to get the assist. He might even get a goal.
he's a very good shout.
And he's going to be differential.
But it's too early to be thinking I need to play catch up. Just get your shield out, batten down the hatches. Captain Aguero will save the attacking threats maybe for later in the season when we're looking to gain some ground. My thoughts.
You know, Quigliano, I always put my faith in you, and I see you as a good FPL manager, so I'm going to stick by you on that. So we're going to go Aguero captain, the unimaginative choice. If we had a few more balls amongst us, we might go Ayew, but actually, maybe it's the brains that are seeing us through here.
I like it.
Okay, Quigliano, I've enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. Please do come and check out fantasyfootballtips.co if you listen to this on YouTube, and you can find us at FPL_the source on Twitter. Please check out our sponsors, premierpunt.com, and I've been Mills, you've been Quigliano, and we will see you next week.
Hashtag side tips.
Warning, 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 warning. 3, 2, 1. The FantasyFootballTips.co podcast with Mills and Quigliano.